Hi, I'm Seamless, and today is Friday, which means it's time for a new How to Bass. This one is going to be fun because this is about a sound I made and a track I'm working on. So, without further ado, let's listen to the track. It's kind of loud, it usually is, but here it is. Alright, now let's listen to the bass by itself. Yeah. Now let's listen to the bass without the volume automation. You remember that little preview I put up on Facebook and SoundCloud? That's what this is from. Only with some reverb. I also disabled the sidechaining, which I'm actually doing in gross beat this time around. Because house. Anywho, let's look at the actual sound. So, as you also can recall, this is from that picture I took. And if you're wondering how I got this massive visualizer, it's from, I wrote this in the thingy down here. Can I has more view? It gives you view. It's kind of a little Easter eggy thing that they put in there. So you can see here, this is actually titled Phase Word 14 because this is actually based on one of my older experiments. It's like a week older, like a month or so old, I guess. Based on rhythmic basses using the phaser as the rhythm creator. However, I noticed interesting behavior that occurred when I used the harmonic setting for the phaser scale. And it turns out it basically it's a little odd. Like it creates these weird shapes like this. I'm still typing. How do I not type? Escape. There it is. That sounds weird. Anywho, it creates these weird and interesting shapes according to the position of basically the unison and the unison pitch. Like that kind of lines up with what's going on here. And so that's that. So it's like the harmonic phaser sort of applies to this. And then when we have keyboard tracking, it gets even weirder. Then, of course, you see that it's actually normalizing after a second. And why is that? And that's because I'm actually editing the articulator of the unison pitch thickness. So, like this fader here is being pulled down. If I turn it off, see this trippy business going on over here. It looks like a tool cover. And you might be wondering where that's coming from. And this original bit is also coming from the prism. And again, this is also being edited down. And that's just causing lots and lots of fun. So let's build this kind of sound from the ground up for a second. Probably not going to get the exact same thing, but I just want to hammer home the idea of that this is based around the harmonic setting of the phaser. So let's turn on Unison and mess around for a second. So other fun things include the fact that I actually had the speed disabled for the phaser here. And this is because I wanted direct control over this basic effect. So from this basic setup, we can conclude that the primary modulation of the sound that I've created already is achieved with automating of the unison pitch. And this is enabled by the phaser's harmonic setting with the width all the way off and the speed off. You can do a little bit of keyboard tracking too. And now we're getting this sort of environment again. Also because I did a little bit of changes here. So, and of course I'm also distorting it. And that makes some seriously unique and ridiculous looking shapes. And of course, it also sounds a lot of coolness. Now, as far as using the sound, you notice I had volume automation going on in the master thing. And that's because this sound is nuts. Like, stuff happens. It just happens. And I'm also automating a huge slew of things in the rest of these parameters. So I'm going to re-engage these businesses. Actually gonna turn back on the volume automation. Yeah, it's important. Can't see my keyboard. So what all am I automating? Well, that's this stuff here. This is what this primary huge chunk of automation is. So I'm automating the harmonic detune, the unison panning, the unison pitch, and the phaser offset. So like we said, the primary modulation of the sound is being controlled by the movement of the unison pitch thickness. So I'm automating this. So even though this is moving pretty much from whatever level this is to off, the starting level greatly influences how the character of the sound. Because this is basically a static unison sound. So like it begins in unison and then it evens out, which means that the waves are going to be in sync. They're going to be in sync again, but they'll have been moved out of phase based on the pitch and also the phase settings. So like all the rest of the phase verbs from your minor changes in that creates very different sounds. Despite the fact that a lot of this MIDI kind of repeats, you can sort of see a motif here because of these different settings. It's just wildly different. And so, of course, the harmonic detune is this guy here. I'm modulating between 1 and 2. So, like right there, this craziness is going on. Not only am I moving it like with the pitch sliding, which is a lot of that's going on in the MIDI, but I'm also moving the harmonic detune. And that sort of inconsistency in the sound is what you're hearing when it's moving in between either point 1 or 2. And when it's like right in the middle, it starts to sound a bit too destructive. But when it's close, it gets this sort of nice whooshy sound that I like. Right there, that guy. And of course, so when I started right there, it sounded different. It's because I have a bit of it going on beforehand. And that's the point of having a volume automation, is because I wanted the stability of the standard saw bass that I have here, but I also wanted the ridiculousness of long form modulation from these guys. What do I mean by long form modulation? Well, the sound obviously evolves as it plays and is pitched up and down and all that stuff. So I didn't really want the beginning of the sound, but I did want the result of the sound. So that's why I began it in silence and then I brought it up. So it's doing all of its modulation and it's processing and it's phasing, but then it's not being audible until it gets to a point where I want it to be. Like so. Or otherwise it just would have been that, which is not as interesting as this, in my opinion. So that's why this volume automation is primarily being the way it is. It's because like in the preview you heard, like there's a lot of interesting things going on, but there's also a lot of just way too much like distortion and the weird sounding things happening that aren't necessarily musical. And while that could be cool for certain genres, like more neuro-y based things, for this particular song, that absolute balls to the wall bonkers craziness does not necessarily fit with what I had in mind. So that's why volume automation. So that's kind of cool. What else I had going? A phaser offset. So again, the phaser is not moving. It's the speed is 0, which means that it's set where it is. However, you can manually control the offset with this wheel here. And you notice how it spins freely. And this is because the way that this phaser works is that it's, a rolling comb filter, basically, that can be, shaped. I have a specific shape that I'm doing, but that's not super important. You saw on the other sound that I made, I didn't mess with the shape, but this is actually a remnant of the actual Phaseware 14 preset. But if I like move this in rhythm, like that's more or less what's doing it, because it goes from 0 to 360. Does it actually do that? Yeah, 0 to 360, then back to 0 again, and that's more or less just continuous movement. You can't hear the sound, but you can see what's happening. Like I'm rotating the phaser in such a way. But also, starting in specific positions will drastically change how the sound plays out. So that's the point of automating it as I'm doing, which is actually very slowly in comparison to how the phaser actually moves. Because again, that would have been very different if it was. Or it's ignoring me. No, it's actually doing it. This one is gonna you see how very thick it is with the stuff going on. It's because of the not only the Harmonic D2 business, but also the pitch that I chose, and also the fact that it's pitch sliding. So while there is differences being born of the phaser difference, of course, top and bottom are actually identical values because, again, it's 0 and 360, which is to say start and then all the way around and then start again. So 0, 360, 180 kind of deal. So it's kind of the same as like changing the phase in Citrus. Middle values are sometimes better. Don't want to change that too much. But yes, that's what this was more or less decided to be. Now, the way that I've written this track is that I made like a MIDI thing with the bass, and because I knew that I was going to want volume automation for this sort of thing, mostly because of the dilemma I was faced with for this sound, and that I wanted to start it up earlier instead of having it play right then. So that being said, what I basically did is I made it crazy, and then I did random ass automation on the Unison pitch primarily. I added in the Unison panning, which is basically it increases stereo presence for a second. That's what that kind of does. And yeah, so then I messed around with the pitch thickness, and then I kind of just adjusted the taste throughout the rest of the track. I would make unique and then make minor changes, tiny different changes all around. So that basically more or less the same thing is happening. Like you could see the different patterns as I created different MIDI events for it to follow. And then also the volume automation is different all the time, but they all used to be from the same thing. So now there's a sort of a constant slow modulation to the whole sound. I guess you could say it's progressive. I guess you could say that. I actually don't know if you can because I'm not familiar with the genre. Progressive anything. It's not something I do. So this is new and cool. Yeah. It basically covers the sound. If you have any questions, let me know. And as usual, have a nice day. Oh, tomorrow I'm live streaming. Tomorrow being Saturday, so on top of having a new FL Basics, I'll also be streaming at 6 p.m. EST -5 GMT. Justin.tv/SeamlessR. There's a link in the description. You can go there, and you'll be able to see me stream live. I'm probably still going to be working on that one electro track that I have going, and we'll see how that goes. I will see you then. I hope I see you then. I like seeing you guys. It makes me happy.